Welcome to PlayerDriven. Here's what you're about to listen to on today's episode. We're talking with Josh Plotnek. He is the head of content at Kiwano, and we talk about all things data on this episode. We talk about the importance of actionable insights from data. Data alone is just a bunch of numbers that you can do whatever you want. You can tell any type of story, but insights will actually lead you to takeaways and what you can do from that data. We talk about frustration versus engagement. Who's getting frustrated in the game and at what stage? What is the root cause of that frustration, and what can you do to help keep that player happy and in the game? And then we talk about starting small and then scaling analytics. There's lots of tools like Kiwano out there that can help you once you're scaling to help look at make actionable insights on your data, but there's also ways to get started at no cost or for free just by taking a look at some of your data. It's a really fun episode, great stuff. Josh has a lot of knowledge in his head about this stuff, so it's great to hear about, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to PlayerDriven. Greg here. Today we are joined by Josh Plotnek. He is the head of content at Kiwano. We are going to talk about all things data because I love data. Josh loves data. Everyone loves data. We make better decisions when we talk about data and we look at data. So we're here to understand what we should be looking at, why we should be looking at it, the importance of it, and everything in between. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. How is your day today?
Very good. Even better now that I'm on the podcast. Excited to be here, join the pantheon of legends from the game development community. And to be part of that, I'm really flattered and honored that you called me, and excited to get down to business.
I appreciate it. That's a lot of pressure. The legends. I really appreciate you saying that. And Josh, I found you. I tracked you down online. For weeks, and this was a couple months ago. I started seeing posts that were coming from Kiwano, and that was a new name to me. And the blogs I thought were fantastic. It showed that there was thought put into it, there was insight put into it, and something that always kind of made me think was, where does this data come from? It's one thing when you own the data and you can look into the data, you can dive into the data. You have companies like Newzoo that are publishing stats from across the industry. First off, again, I'm rambling here, but thank you so much for the content you put out there. I think it's extremely powerful. I think it's educational, which is something that's important to me. I'm curious, how did you fall into this role of kind of analyzing data? And I want to get into where the data comes from, but kind of what sparked your interest in figuring out what this data is and how it connects these pieces?
Wow. Well, first and foremost, I'm about to cry because you're just like, it's so flattering, and I really appreciate the love. If my work can like reach out and affect people and give people value, that's amazing. So I really appreciate it. I mean, first and foremost, I'm just like happy to say a bit about myself. I want to like right off the bat just disclose to everyone watching, I'm not like this position of mine is my first entry point into the game development world. I haven't worked in game development in the past. I'm passionate about gaming for sure, and I guess like I'm more of a classics guy. And when I was a kid, I used to love playing games like Mario Kart, Street Fighter, Vice City. I'm a big soccer fan as well. So for like a good part of 10 years, the only game I played was Pro Evolution Soccer, which I think rebranded to eFootball recently. Um, and since I got married and have kids, like I'm not really playing anything anymore. I'm like, I don't really have the time. My wife won't give me that time. I love her, but that's the current situation. Maybe when my kids grow up, I'll be able to start playing with them. I've also played GTA games on my phone, so I kind of understand and definitely got more appreciation over the last 6 months of what it takes for developers to kind of convert console games into mobile games and cross-platform adaptation. Um, Undergoing some kind of crash course right now into all things game dev and analytics and AI, all the buzzwords, and thankfully at Kiwano I have this great team of experts, experienced people from the game development world, people who've worked at Plarium, people who entrepreneurs in the B2B SaaS world, also data scientists and AI experts. So I'm really learning about this stuff at a fast pace. I kind of feel like Neo in the Matrix sometimes, like when he learned Kung Fu in 10 seconds. I don't know if I know data as well as he knows Kung Fu, but I'm getting there little by little. With that said, I'm appreciating the freedom I'm getting to be able to turn this knowledge into, trying to anyway, turn it into engaging content, whether through infographics, social media posts, and jumping on amazing podcasts like PlayerDriven. Uh, in terms of finding the right data that matters, we can dive into that more as the episode goes on. Um, but yeah, I just want to say off the bat, anything I do share, it's really much on behalf of those experts who have taught me so much over the last 6 months. So anyone watching this, if you have take issue with anything I'm saying, if anything isn't so clear, don't shoot the messenger. You can reach out to anyone at Kiwano with questions on our website. We have contact us pages, so we're available.
So don't go after Josh if he says something controversial, which I think we're in the clear here. When you're so you were in you loved gaming, and obviously life happens, right? It takes a seat. You found your way back here. What happened in the middle? Were you studying data? Were you studying something in a different field? Like, how did you get back into the field?
No data course, no nothing. Like this is a byproduct of the position I'm in right now. Leaning on my course right now is learning from those data scientists and AI experts that I'm sitting next to every day, and getting information from them. When I'm conducting research for my content, I lean in onto them for questions. If I just wanted a little piece of information for an article about, I don't know, multi-agent systems, um, my AI expert, what I'm looking for is maybe a paragraph, and he'll just dive in for like half an hour to an hour about everything multi-agent related, and I'm learning like maybe like 5 to 10 more articles worth of content. So it can be very extensive in terms of like data-based knowledge that I'm learning. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's the full
Yeah.
extent of how I'm kind of like learning this stuff right now.
And I love that. We always talk about it on Player Driven. Sometimes you just need to dive in, whether it's a subject you know, a subject you don't know, right? I remember in college, right, university, I had to take an accounting class. I had to take multiple accounting classes because that's what you got to do when you're in business. And the truth is, you can take a million accounting classes, but when you go to your first job, whether it be with one of the big four financial firms or accounting firms or something else, they teach you their way of accounting. You don't need to know everything you learned in university because they're going to teach you how they do it. And I don't think it's different in any other field. You can be a programmer, you can be a designer, you can be a data scientist, right? You can learn the basics, but when you get to your first job, you're going to sit down and you're going to see how the experts around you do it, how the other people in your field are going to do it. And you're going to adapt to those methodologies. And maybe you'll not know some of the high level reasonings behind things, right? But the truth is, a lot of people learn this thing on the job, and it's very important to monitor those around you, see what they do right, see what they do wrong. If you don't set your bar to your peers, right, you're not going to exceed kind of the knowledge gap that you need there. And I think it's important to become a sponge of those around you and absorb that information to follow those best practices. And it's one thing that we talk about data, because I think data is very important, and I'd love to learn more about what really Kiwano is doing, because without insights, data is pretty pointless. It's a bunch of numbers, it's a bunch of stats, it's a bunch of figures that you can tell a story about, right? Any type of number you can build a story around, but finding real insights in there is something that's valuable and not as easy. So, can you kind of give us a high level kind of what is Kiwano do, and how does it take that data, or what data is it taking, and kind of how is it building it out for customers?
Yeah, I'm happy to break down what it is and what Kiwano is and what it does. In very short terms, it's Kiwano is the world's very first AI analyst. Um, it offers automated data collection and analysts for teams of any size without any complexity. So, an indie game studio consisting of 10 to 20 employees, or a large enterprise that has thousands of employees, can benefit from this platform and it will address the needs of their current situation. It achieves this in a few ways. Firstly, Kiwano has this custom built data infrastructure. It's super fast, and I don't want to like underestimate that. Basically, in fact, it's 600 times faster than any other database out there. Specifically, it can process hundreds of millions of player events per second. Secondly, it can load and visualize 1 billion events in under 2 seconds on our special behavioral map, which basically gives the user an outline or like an overview of the game flow. And this can be presented across all your players, or you can zoom in on specific segments of your players. But I'd say most importantly, this high-speed database, it powers AI agents to proactively look into any player behavior. And then it zooms in on any step. These agents, they provide accurate insights that don't just tell you what the problems are in your game. They explain to you why these problems are happening intuitively. But it also tells you, it goes one step further than that, actually. It provides you with actionable recommendations of how you can solve those problems. Um, I have this very clear example in my head that my CTO has told me over the last few months, and it always comes to mind. I'm happy to share with you. Basically, let's say players are churning at level 7 during a boss fight. You can use your imagination of what kind of genre game that could be. So traditional analytics tools, they might focus on the difficulty of that boss. But Kiwano can trace that issue back 5 levels, discovering that players who didn't collect a specific sword in level 2 couldn't defeat the boss in level 7. So no other tool can really analyze this type of long chain of events so effectively, quite like Kiwano can. That is really something that makes us different, and it makes us better. So that level of detail would normally be extremely expensive and probably require a whole team of analysts for this kind of process. But Kiwano, whoever's using it can just plug it in. It's very easy to integrate and set up, and the AI does the heavy lifting for the user.
I think that sounds like a dream, right? If I own a studio, if I own a game, I want to know what's happening in the game. And I'll never forget years ago, I was on a sales call. We went to Coca-Cola and we were selling a social listening tool. And they asked a question, how do I know what I don't know? And it was a fascinating question because it was during the time when boozy soda started to kind of make a comeback or whatever. It started to penetrate the market. And they said, we can set up social listening to look up beer, and we can set up social listening to look up cocktails, but we didn't know that boozy soda was going to come up. So how do I know what I don't know? And what you're saying is that Kiwano could take a look at the data set from within the game and figure things out that I may not be knowing. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's very important for these companies, whether it be an indie game or a AAA game, to be looking at this data. I think collecting it's important. It's again about coming back to insights with it. But for smaller studios, it is overwhelming, right? How can studios get started by looking at this data if they don't have either a full team dedicated to it? Are there, like you said, it works for indies, but how would an indie go about using the tool?
Yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming, especially when you're a small team and you're wearing multiple hats. The key, I'd say, is to start small. Focus on what is actually doable. I'd say a few cost effective tricks are things like tracking basic player events with free tools. Some that come to mind include things like Unity Analytics, Firebase. Those are solutions I've covered on Kiwano's blog. You can possibly use in game surveys and natural moments, for example, like a level completion. Uh, you could also pull insights from support tickets or app store reviews, like those that are real signals from real players. Uh, Even watching stream platforms like Twitch or playtests, they can help you spot issues that players maybe don't articulate in the moment. So, yeah, but with all that said, I think that once you go beyond those basics, most analytic tools will, and processes could hit a wall. They might have limitations to them. So as you scale, I'd say investing in a higher level AI driven platform like Kiwano is probably the way to go.
Yeah, so for smaller, obviously it's more manageable set of data, right? You could define the few metrics, things like retention rate, things like handle time, or playtime, right? I think it's easy enough, not easy enough, but it's something you can track, right? But it's when you want to start to scale, get a better idea of deeper insights, then you want to start doing an investment into a tool that can help analyze this stuff. Does that seem right?
This is spot on. In fact, I'm just going to plug your article from our website because I believe you addressed this in your own article for Kiwano's website. You said not every developer has the luxury of scaling support quickly. That's why setting a solid foundation before launch is so important. So yeah, you can't fix what you can't see. I think you already mentioned this. Many teams they wait too long to build a system that scales. So you need to be able to give small teams that foundation, accurate insights, but without all of the overhead and too many resources, expenditure. Uh, that's the way I look at it, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And Josh is referencing that we did do blogs for each other's sites. We'll post that in the comments as well, or the show notes, so you can check out each other's blogs and see what that's like. And now that you're kind of going down this route, right? I think one of the big things that I think we wrote about were kind of player feedback and how it can make or break a game. Um, Understanding feedback from players, I think, is something that's essential. And I've come to learn there's really two types of feedback. There's qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative
Yes.
is just kind of the hard numbers, the pure data facts you can find, where quantitative or qualitative is the reasoning behind it, right? Why does someone not like my game? Is it a specific item? um, you've been following data for quite a bit, right? Is there a big mistake that you see that studios make when starting to collect data, whether it be player data? Do they jump the gun? Do they misanalyze something? Is there something that maybe is a common mistake you've seen?
Based on my own research, I'd say that one of the biggest mistakes is relying too heavily on feedback that is kind of, surface level. Studios, they collect surveys, right? They browse forums, they're on Discord a lot, which is great, but they rarely connect that to what's actually happening in the game, in my opinion. So if someone says this boss is too hard, okay, player behavior doesn't really show a drop off at that moment. You might be fixing a problem that doesn't exist or ignoring a problem that does. It can go both ways. That's one thing. Another thing that comes to mind is player reviews. So one player might give your game 5 stars, right? Even if it's full of performance issues. So it might not be an accurate representation of what how good the game actually is. Then another player might give you 1 star. This is like on the flip side. But basically everything's working just fine. Both are possible. Another mistake is chasing the loudest complaints. So just because something's trending in your community, it doesn't necessarily mean it's affecting all of your players or even most of them. Um, so going back to what you said in the question, in my opinion, you need to combine that qualitative feedback and the quantitative feedback. In other words, behavior data to really understand a player's experience. Um, of course, some AI can help solve these issues. For example, in theory, it can automatically read through player reviews and find the most common issues, which I think is like a huge win for developers moving forward.
I You said a few things that I really loved, and I think it's things that we should just re-mention, right? Frustration and churn, although they may be related, they're separate, right? I can get frustrated at a boss, doesn't mean I'm going to churn because of it, right? It's I think there's different signs if someone's becoming frustrated and is going to churn versus if someone's becoming frustrated and it's just determined to beat something, right? I think those
Mhm.
are different signals, and it's fascinating to think about it. It's like, in a terrible analogy, right? It's like Spanish. There's Spanish from Spain, and then there's Spanish from Mexico, or Portuguese might be the better one, right? Like there's different dialects of different things, and how do you tell the difference between that? And then I love how you just called it behavior data. I think that's a great way to take a look at it. What is the behavior of this person? Are they going into more menus after they lose a battle to try and level up their character or perform other actions? Are they just rage quitting? it really is a double-edged sword frustration, right? And your post kind of talked about it, how it can either lead to loyalty because I am dedicated to this game, or it can lead to churn because screw you, I'm not going to try and beat this game over and over again. Is there a way to actually tell the difference between that though from a tool, or is it all just like gut feeling?
I'd say that frustration, ironically, it can be engaging if it's part of the challenge in a healthy way. Like when, for example, like when a player keeps trying to beat a tough level. Uh, with that said, it can get toxic quite quickly if it comes from things like bugs or poor UX, poor performance in the game. And the difference is what players do next. If they re-engage and eventually succeed in the level and are able to progress, that frustration might be working in your favor. Um, but if they churn and give up, or if they head to a support ticket or want to request a refund, then these are all red flags. So I think studios, they should be looking very much into recovery behaviors. So what I'm alluding to here is like, are players able to bounce back from their frustration, or are they just checking out and never returning? So this is the question that studios need to ask themselves.
I love it. It's fascinating. And again, another term, recovery behaviors. I really like that. What are the actions I take after my frustration point? I think it's fast, like a if this then that type of puzzle, right? And trying to understand if I do this, then what happens, right? And I don't know. These are all terms that make sense, and I probably know in the deep part of my head. But as we're talking about it, it's just fascinating to look at it at a bigger level. And I'm curious, again, what are some underrated ways maybe developers can start tracking this type of sentiment? Obviously, when you want to start to scale, you can look at tools, right? But is there a simple way to get started, or sometimes it's just not? Sometimes it's just a little too complex that there's no simple way to do it.
So I'd go as far as to say that they're one and the same, at least in my opinion. Player behavior, it is player sentiment, and you just have to kind of learn how to interpret that or read it. So you need to watch out for things that you've already alluded to it, like rage quitting, skip tutorials, sudden session drops. I can go on. There's more off the top of my mind. Abandoned levels. There's also the concept of silent churn. So like basically when players leave without even saying anything. So support tickets, bug reports, they're also underrated indicators. But if a player is going to take a time out of their day to report something, it probably matters a whole lot to them, and at least that is a encouraging signal that they care about what they're playing, and all they want is someone on the other end to say, "Hey, I hear you, and we're working on this, and we want to make it this experience better for you."
We talked about this earlier, right? Raw data is one thing, insights are another, right? And I think insights are kind of, you take the raw ingredients of I don't know, a meal, call it a lasagna, right? And it's one thing to have raw ingredients, but when you put it together, it creates this amazing meal. And I think that's what insights are. Are there some key high level trends or metrics that studios should be focusing on or analyzing on when looking at this player behavior?
I wouldn't quite identify them as trends, but it's just like metrics that have kind of been with the game developing like consensus for like since the dawn of time, basically. At a certain point, it's not even about collecting more data, but asking like the right questions. So yeah, studios I think should be focusing on things like obviously retention, churn, funnel drop-offs come to mind, feature adoption. Uh, these kind of all fall in kind of a similar bracket. Then you've got your monetization metrics, things like LTV, ARPU, things of that nature. The tricky part, I'd say, is understanding why these things are happening, or why certain metrics are being quantified the way they are. So finding the root causes behind why they are the way they are. That's where things can get a little bit messy, where a lot of teams can get stuck on these numbers. So that's a huge pain point that Kiwano tries to address we're focused on giving developers the tools to automate analytics in general, but especially root cause analysis. So instead of being overwhelmed with numbers and dashboards and things that maybe like people who don't work day in day out in the analyst space are not so familiar with, Kiwano points out, okay, here's a problem. Here's the group that is mainly affected by this problem. It could be everyone, who knows. Here's where it started, this problem, and here's what we're going to look into to try and solve this problem. It gives you all of those details through a few ways, but one of the ways is in a chat through free text. You can like supply the question, and Kiwano will give you the answer back. But generally, it's about closing the gap between understanding the problem and knowing what to do about it. How can you turn a problem into a solution? I think you wrote about it a little in your article. You said a solid help center and support system can enhance the player experience. It's not just about solving issues, it's about reinforcing player trust and loyalty. So I think there's a transferable sentiment there into what Kiwano can do.
I love how you put surface level insights. I think it's important to really dig into what is the cause for a problem. I remember working help desk when I was just starting off in the industry, right? And you get a problem and you're like, oh, the game is crashing. The game is crashing. All right, that's the surface level insight. We need kind of the root cause analysis, right? And the fact that there's a chat interface, you can say, what are all the events happening that can cause this to happen? It can almost build out a roadmap or a mind map of, hey, here's everything that feeds into this, right? It's so much easier than looking at logs or texts and a way of analyzing things, because it creates it in a more visually consumable way where I can take a look at this type of data and understand what goes into making the pie here. And I think that's really a great way to look at it.
I'd say it's true for analytics in general. You're not just finding bugs or trends. You're showing your players that you understand them and that you're paying attention. I think that's like a core sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do my fireball round here. I'm going to throw some quick questions at you. Not studied, not practiced. You good?
We'll try.
All right. It'll be easy, I promise. What did you have for breakfast?
The leftover sandwich of my baby. He didn't eat most of it. I ate it instead.
All right. Um, what is the last book or movie you read or watched?
Been watching mainly TV shows. And the last
All right.
TV show I watched
What's
was
the last show that you've
Severance.
binge watched?
Severance.
Severance?
Yeah.
Oh, I finished that last night. Did you finish it yet?
Kind of crazy. Yeah. I watched the finale. Absolutely love it. I
Well,
feel like
lots of
a lot
questions.
of people can relate to it, like that work-life balance, and it kind of flips on its head. And it's um, it's just an incredible concept that's executed so well.
Yeah. What is the last game you played?
I played some kind of card game, poker. I played poker
Poker.
a
There
few
we go.
weeks ago.
What is your dream vacation?
Ooh, wow, that's an amazing question. There's so many places I want to go to. I'd love to go to South America. I don't think I'm going to have the time anytime in the next few years, at least. But it's a
You
dream.
never know. Last question I have is, what if you were to go to a bar, what would be your drink order?
Wow,
Does not need to be alcohol.
this is true. But where's the fun in that?
Uh, I always cover my ass, you know?
My dad's favorite drink is a Southern Comfort and lemonade, or Southern Comfort and lime, and I always enjoy having that as like respect to him. So
All
if
right,
that's
love it.
available, I'll go for it.
All right, boom, off the hot seat. Um, your role is head of content, and I'd love to understand what your workflow is like. How do you go about creating a piece of content?
Mm.
Um, can you kind of walk through what your process is on how you determine what you want to write about, and how you start that?
Well, it really varies from one piece of content to the next. Um, but the general outline, if I could like generalize it a little, would it revolves around a bunch of different things. One includes what is currently being discussed in the industry, and who are the big players that are discussing these topics. So I try to research what they're covering via both their blogs and their social media channels, seeing what's being discussed out there. So that's one of my starting points for sure. Um, SEO research is important in content, I believe. I wouldn't consider myself an SEO expert by any means, but it's something I'm definitely like improving on. So I
I would
use,
consider you an SEO expert based on us trading our articles. You do a lot more research into that, and it's fascinating.
well, I appreciate it. I'd recommend using tools like SEMrush to give you that boost in terms of keyword research, finding the words that are really like flowing around and generating the most traffic and are the easiest to target. That's definitely one of my core strategies. And then the key is to find there are topics that just aren't that easy to expand into long form or into various different mediums. Different topics lend themselves to better different mediums, in my opinion. For a piece of blog content, obviously, like constructing some kind of engaging list is always a neat way to go. Um, X amount of analytics tools that are going to make your data interpretation so much easier. Just off the top of my head, I mean that is one way you could go. And another direction with blog content is to dive in more theoretically and focus in on a topic and kind of expand upon it more tangentially, almost kind of like you're having a conversation with the reader. Um, I leverage my experienced colleagues a lot. I think I previously mentioned this. I will ask someone a question. They will provide me a ton of information that is very useful, and I will take as many notes as I possibly can, and I'll exhaust my options, and I'll try and make sense of it and see what it has potential to be converted into engaging content that way. Uh, I'm grateful to work at Kiwano because I've basically been given the freedom to experiment with different content styles, content formats, not just going beyond the blog, but also being able to produce infographics and working in um, graphic design, being able to share content on social media platforms like LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. That's the current platforms we're on right now. And they all kind of lend themselves to kind of different needs, and the content needs to be kind of repurposed or recontextualized and redesigned in different ways that are palatable for those audiences. Um, I feel like there's a ton of other components of my process and that I'm missing out on, but I'm wondering, I'm also interested to learn what your process is.
Yeah, it's funny. You say this, and I realize it's tough to plan social media content cross channel. You can use a tool that cross posts, which I do. I use a tool Metricool, which is fine enough. That has its quirks. But you have to do keyword research, hashtag research. You can't format a TikTok like an Instagram, and it's different than a YouTube. And you got to go in there, and everything's got its nuances. And then the algorithms are against you, right? It's TikTok's like, hey, if you post it from our platform, you'll get more boosts than if you post it from a third-party platform. Then you got to measure, is it worth taking an additional 10 minutes? And people will only say, oh, it's only 10 minutes. Well, there's a lot of other stuff going on throughout the day as well, right? To go to each social media network and plan this stuff out. So it's kind of this wild, and it's similar to, you were talking about different types of posts, right? A blog post, an infographic, just a regular graphic, a video, a short video, right? Like, what connects with people. And I don't do the X thing, and everyone's told me I should be on X because that's where a lot of developers just are. And I just don't feel like another account. It's not anything else other than I just don't feel like another account at this point.
Well, share with you a
And
little insight that kind of when you're on that topic of X, you know,
go for it.
very effective. Um, I won't mention her name, but an influencer that I've been collaborating with over the last few months, she believes that a lot of game developers and people working in the gaming space have migrated over to Blue Sky,
Yeah.
which is obviously like a direct competitor to X. So I'm not on Blue Sky right now. Uh, I ought to be. And we'll try to make Kiwano a platform, an account on it on Blue Sky as soon as possible, because first and foremost, she is there, and we want to collaborate with her there. And so, yeah, I would share that little tidbit while we're on the topic of platforms that are effective in this community.
Yeah, I tried Blue Sky for a week and change, but I don't like the limitation of 300 characters and under 60 seconds of video because all the stuff I post is either little text heavy or it's a video based on what I've done. So I'm not going to try and fit in a square box. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And that's just kind of where I'm at right now. If I were to
Yeah,
ever get someone that helps with that content, I would no doubt about do it. But it's just, again, you got to look at your time in the day and decide where you want to put your efforts. And I think that's the hardest part for me to realize is, I stopped posting to Facebook because I realized Facebook is just not my audience. Instagram, I'm iffy about. Instagram's harder because I want to be on it, but it's hard for me to find traction on Facebook. So at the end of the day, I have to look at the content I'm posting and decide, is it still worth my time or not? And it's tough because I love doing what I'm doing, but if it's not generating value, I should just pull that band-aid and save my time.
for sure. Well, it's on my mind. I was in contact with another influencer recently who have been collaborating with, and they have a large presence on LinkedIn. And I basically said to them, I think your visuals would be fantastic. They'd be perfectly suited to Instagram, um, just because of like the accessibility of them. And their response was basically, I'm spending too much time on LinkedIn. I don't have time for other platforms.
It's tough, and you're trying to monetize each platform in a way, or at least get the value by awareness, right? And it's tough. It's like a juggling act and deciding where you want to put your time. Again, it's time is the one commodity we can't control, right? There's 24 hours of it in a day. You got to pick your poisons. And I think in any role, right, it's funny, even in gaming, I've had an old sales manager that used to say, hey, if you're creating something and it's not working, fail fast, right? Know when to pull the band-aid, right? There's no reason to be sitting on something, working on something when maybe it's even in your gut that it's not going to work out. So if you're going to fail at something, fail fast, move on and iterate, cut the cord, keep moving on what is working for you and make it better. um, but I can also see kind of an argument against that. But that's kind of my theory: is fail fast, move on, and keep creating stuff.
Goes both ways, I guess. They say you gotta try and experiment. Insanity, you're doing the same thing over and over again. But on the flip
Mm-hmm.
side, you have to persevere and you give something enough time and attention, you'll begin to start seeing the fruit of your labors. Like I've been making posts and infographics on LinkedIn, for example, and at the beginning they weren't necessarily getting too much traction. Part of that wasn't necessarily to do with the content either. Like the quality has always been there, but it's also to do with uh, where you're posting and what time you're posting, which LinkedIn groups are you targeting, for example. If you're able to find an audience that you know is going to really gravitate towards that content and gain value from it, you'll over time and over multiple attempts, you'll start to see the fruit of your labors. Your impressions will go up, reactions will go up. I wouldn't call myself I said I wasn't an SEO expert. I wouldn't call myself a social media expert either, but I'm definitely like compared me to a few months ago, I'm light years ahead of where I was in terms of what I'm capable of. So I think, like I said, it's all about time and perseverance.
It is. Consistency is key, right? If you're
Yes,
consistent at it, right, and as long as you're putting out a quality product, people will start to notice it as long as it's quality, right? And the problem in the world of AI content creation is you see a lot of posts now that are clearly from AI, and I think people are starting to kind of see right through that and skip that content over. And I still think there's a great role for AI out there, but it's no longer just throw it into chat gpt, get it something spit out and post it, right? Everyone's doing that now. How do you take it to the next level? How do you make it more meaningful? How do you take your own data and feed your data into the machine, right? Again, same thing with Kiwano, right? It's your own data. It's looking at your own data, which makes it unique. It's not just socially available data that anyone could get. And that's what's going to be the special sauce there, is what is powering the creation or the tool that creates this stuff. And I think it's a fascinating world we're going to be in for the next few years here.
100%. I actually have something that I'm able to kind of add towards that in general because I'm thinking about originality, right? And You know, there is so much content out there, and it's hard to say like what is original and what isn't, what is just regurgitated, what is just the byproduct of a prompt on ChatGPT. Um, there's always the temptation to lean into that level of automation, but it's always important to try and put your stamp on your content and make sure it's as personable as possible and has your soul all over it. Otherwise, what's the point? AI automation, it's a contentious topic. Bottom line, people have varying opinions on it. But this is my take. I, it can completely support your team or can support yourself as an individual. It doesn't just mean necessarily replacing an individual, replacing a team. When AI is used properly, it's a buddy, it's an assistant. It can handle the boring stuff, the repetitive tasks, the tedious work, the stuff you don't want to do necessarily. You want to focus on the creative stuff, the important tasks that really have an impact on your business. AI is it's a servant, that person. In this theory, it should give us humans more time to deliver high quality work. And whether that be um, more accurate instant analytics, high quality support for your players, um, genuine engaging content on social media, that's what AI is best for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I always like to tell people it basically turns Tony Stark into Iron Man, Bruce Wayne into Batman, right? It makes what you can do enhanced. It allows you to do more with your time. It removes the mundane stuff from your plate and allows you to accomplish more from within your day. It shouldn't replace the individual that's creating this stuff. It shouldn't empower them to do more. It should give them more tools to their advantage to allow them to grow as an individual. I'll never forget my first role in tier one support, right? I was hungry for more, right? You need to keep being that hunger for more. And if you can find a way to take those mundane things you do on an everyday basis and automate it or find a way to get it done quicker, it gives you more time to continue to grow and learn in other fields, right? So maybe you want to be a developer today, but you're a community manager, right? So how can you automate some of this stuff in your community management part of the day to focus on some of this game development side, right? It's a superpower that we can utilize to help advance our careers if we use it properly. And we need to make sure that we are enabling humans to use these tools rather than shun them, right? Some of them are going to be crap tools. That's just the way of the world. And with new technology, people are going to create things that are wild, right? But over time, you'll see the fat. People will say less and less about AI. That just means the tool is maturing. It's going to be into bigger products. It's going to be implemented in a way where maybe it's not as in your face, and that's when we're going to start to see change happen. I mean, we're already seeing change happen, but I think that that's really the superpower of AI is to let us do more with our time.
100%. And this is exactly one of the goals we set out to achieve with Kiwano. To leverage AI, specifically AI agents, to help identify player issues for all kinds of teams, CX teams, marketing teams, product teams, analytics teams, designers, regardless of their level of analytics expertise or technical expertise, so that they can feel sure about their decisions. So this kind of automation, it's not about replacing humans at all. It's on the contrary, it's about empowering us to solve problems more easily and more efficiently.
Love it. I'm gonna end it there because I feel like that's the most beautiful way to put it. But at the end of the day, when you're a small studio that you're looking to build a game that you're looking to scale, expand upon, right? You can spend your time digging through logs, digging through code, understanding what's happening, or you find a way to find a tool that, whether it be Kiwano, whether it be some other tool that exists out there, right, to help automatically create these insights for you. I mean, the data is there. It's up to you if you want to utilize that data at the end of the day, right? But at least data backed decisions, at least you're more educated in that case rather than just swinging in the dark and trying to figure out what happens. And again, I love the fact that you don't need a tool to get started. Just choose a few metrics you want to start measuring. And when you start measuring it, see types of results you can get. And then eventually when you're ready to scale, right, if you want to use a tool, there's tools available to you. It's just there's a lot of data out there. And it would be foolish not to at least start looking at this data to make educated decisions. You don't have to live and die by the data, but the best decisions get made by looking at resources that will allow you to measure how well you're doing against a standard.
Yeah. And I think to a degree, there can be a bit of a stigma attached to even the word data. It can be scary. Some people can be intimidated by it because maybe a lot of people, they're just not numbers people. Me, myself, I use data analytics to a degree, but it's not something I've kind of that's grown naturally to me or I've like grown up with. It's something I've been forced to, keep up with as the world evolves. Um, so I think in terms of the future of where data and data analytics is going, for it to affect the widest range of people, it needs to be more accessible. And more specifically, I think the most effective way for that is for it to become more conversational than just a bunch of numbers and dashboards. The ability to just like ask a question and get the answer. Um, so you can like find out the answers you need to make the data driven decisions without it necessarily being data at the forefront. It's kind of in the background. That's the way I look at it anyway.
I love it. I think it's great stuff. And Josh Plotnek, head of content at Kiwano. I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate the content you put out online. I think it's educational, informational. I think it's just great stuff, and I would encourage you to keep it up. Before we do end today, is there anything you want to share, talk about, plug?
Um, I'm not the best at plugging. This is a marketing guy coming to you live. Basically, I would say if you're interested in learning about more content from Kiwano, you can go to kiwano.com /blog for we're regularly like churning out content and blog articles about various topics around game development, game analytics, um, latest trends in AI, um, market value reports, um, all kinds of things related around what our platform is capable of. And also, I would just say, like, God bless you, Greg, for taking a chance on me on this podcast because that's what it's like when you bring these guests on, right? It's like flipping a coin. You don't know what you're gonna get. So I'm just like grateful to have been here. The last time I was on a podcast was probably about 10 years ago, where
Sweet.
I spoke with my friend about Star Wars for like 3 hours, and then it never even saw the light of day. I've never even seen it or heard it. So
Really? Wow.
yeah,
Well,
I'm more confident that we're going to see this episode.
I am confident as well, and I just love what you're doing, man. And yeah, you do take a chance, but we've spoken enough. I've seen your content where I felt very confident about bringing you on, just because I love the data and I just love how you're going for it, man. You haven't been a gamer for a while, that you said, but you're in the industry, you're going for it, you're learning from the experts, and I think that sets the example for anyone that wants to be in this industry. Is you just got to do it, talk to mentors, talk to others in the industry. And I think it's a great thing that you're doing it. And the only way you can learn is by doing it and asking questions and being inquisitive. So Josh, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing all this information. We'll have links to the Kiwano blog as well as our website as well, so you can learn more about the tool itself. And Josh, again, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's your end of the day, so I won't keep you in the office here anymore. But thank you so much for coming out today and having this conversation.
Thank you, Greg. Right back at you. And your content is also extremely valuable. I've read over your articles. You have a great way with words. I'd love to examine your brain because the amount of people that you've kind of like been learning from are all different corners of the industry. You're well full of knowledge. And bottom line, you're just a fantastic person. And those are the only kind of people I want to work with and collaborate with. Are good people.
I
And you're right at
appreciate
the
that.
very top.
Thank you very much, Josh. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Greg.